We know the Trudeau Liberals are no stranger to ethics violations. Well, it doesn't just stop there. It goes well into even those that they appoint. Well, recently, Annette Verschuren, who used to be the chair of the Sustainable Technology Development Fund, which has now been disbanded, the Conservatives dub it the Green Slush Fund. Well, she's been found to have been in another ethics violation. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Lorrie Goldstein and Brian Lilley. I don't say it lightly, Lorrie, when we know that the Trudeau government, the Trudeau Liberals, are very familiar with ethics violations. But as this sort of spreads, it now goes to those that they even appoint. Annette Verschuren, the former chair of this fund, this Green Slush Fund, she stepped down. The fund has been disbanded. This is yet another problem for the Trudeau Liberals.
Yeah, to me, the primary problem here is that they are just pouring money into, subsidizing green energy in all of its various forms. And so I think what's going to happen over the long term, perhaps when this government is gone, is that we're going to get Auditor General's reports that are going to go, where did this money go? Now, in this case, this is a specific finding by the ethics commissioner that, as I recall, it was that she did not recuse herself from certain key votes where, because of her corporate connections, it could be argued that there would either be a conflict of interest in her not doing so or a perceived conflict of interest. Now, what he said, what the commissioner said, was that when a vote comes up where you have some interest, no matter how others might consider it remote, you're basically giving money to companies to which you have some connection. You shouldn't abstain. Like, in other words, you shouldn't sit in the room and abstain. You should recuse yourself. And that seems to be the failure. He didn't find her guilty of violating the act on a second charge. And part of it seemed to be that they got bad legal advice, that a lot of this was going on leading up to the pandemic. There was a panic. We've seen all kinds of examples where the government, arguably, justifiably or not, says, well, it was a rush. We had to do all this stuff, right? So to me, the findings aren't an example of corruption, but they're rather an example of what happens in this government all the time.
That's right.
People don't, people don't follow the rules, or they don't understand them. And that's not surprising when the Prime Minister of the country has been found to have violated the Conflict of Interest Act on 2 separate occasions.
Brian, I've lost count of how many times we've talked about ethics violations from various and sundry Liberals over the past 8 to 9 years, but they don't seem to be fussed by these sorts of things. In this particular instance, it really came to head because the Conservatives are asking questions. The Liberals had to disband this fund. They handed out almost $1 billion in subsidies to these green technology companies. I'm sure there will be more audits to be done, and when there is a change of government and who got the money. But even under questioning, bureaucrats don't know how this has happened. The bureaucrats don't understand where the money's gone.
And just the quote here from the report is that Ms. Verschuren improperly furthered the interest of companies that she was affiliated with. Thought that she had recused herself properly, but in fact did not meet the requirements of the act. But as Lorrie said, this happens again and again in this government. When I was looking at the report the other day, I thought, are there any guys named Randy in this? Because of course we've got Randy Boissonnault, the cabinet minister, whose company was getting contracts while he's in cabinet, and there's text messages about making sure that Randy's in the loop. And he's in the Vancouver office today, at the same time that Randy Boissonnault, the cabinet minister, was at a Liberal caucus or cabinet retreat in Vancouver. And then they claimed, oh no, that was the other Randy. And then they couldn't, well, how many people named Randy work at the company? There's only one Randy. Okay, well then Randy's obviously involved in business while he's in cabinet and helping a company that he has an interest in. I don't know how we read it any other way, but Randy Boissonnault wants us to think it's another Randy and not him, and he had nothing to do with it. Oh, and autocorrect is how Randy ended up in the text message. Lorrie, I know you posted on X and social media that you tried typing in Randy 8 times and it never autocorrect didn't fix it or something like that. But this government has a real problem. And then Mike Barrett, the Conservative MP from Eastern Ontario, who does great work at committee on these things, he's asking one of the heads, the bureaucrats in charge of procurement, on a file where the RCMP's actually charged someone with fraud of, I believe it's over $250 million, or sorry, $250,000. Let's not exaggerate, for charging for time that they weren't working. And when Barrett asked basic questions, the head of the department giving out these contracts said, "Oh, I don't have that information in front of me." Why not? You're going to committee to answer questions, but they just want to whistle past the graveyard. They want to look past questionable actions. They want to look past outright corruption in some cases. Is it any wonder that one of the only people to say, "I'll put my name forward for leader of the Liberal Party if Justin Trudeau steps down," is a guy from Montreal, one-time MP, who most people only know because his company got contracts that raised a lot of questions during the pandemic? That's the state of the Liberal government.
Well, Lorrie, I suppose we should be happy about one aspect of this, and that is for the auditors' reports, for ethics commissioners' reports, we likely wouldn't have known to the extent of the challenges, even with the ethics violations from former board members, the accountability in terms of where the money has gone. We're expecting another report to come in August, but I suppose we could take some comfort that we have those levels of accountability, but the money's gone. The money's handed out. It's been procured already from, Liberal friends and acquaintances, and there are rarely are there ever any political consequences for this, particularly when we are so far away from an election. Lorrie.
Yeah, and the Auditor General specifically, and I agree, the fact that we have the Parliamentary Budget Officer, the Auditor General, the Ethics Commissioner, those are good things. Although I would argue that the Ethics Commissioner is constrained by the punitive measures in the conflict, that they're not enough. In fact, previous ethics commissions have said, really, this ought to have more teeth. And it shouldn't be that the primary punishment is a $500 fine for certain offenses or public humiliation, because this doesn't work when politicians have no sense of shame or decorum or being careful about our money.
It doesn't matter.
It just doesn't work. Having said that, I agree that is some level of comfort, but Adrienne, this is one of the things that concerns me about the whole government's green agenda. In the election, it's really come down to, we got to get, from Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative, we got to get rid of the carbon tax. And Justin Trudeau saying, if you get rid of the carbon tax, you don't care about the planet burning. Okay, that's not the serious issue. The serious issue is that last year in April, the Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, boasted that the federal government has committed, the phrase was, north of $200 billion to all aspects of climate change, all those kind of things, in more than 100 programs. And there are enormous amounts of money going out in this.
Yeah.
Recent being the subsidies to electric vehicle manufacturers and battery manufacturers in Ontario. The PBO has talked about the total price tag so far in 13 different projects of this nature being like well over $50 billion. And so it's that when we see these things come above the water in this specific case, which, yeah, it's serious money, but it's nothing like the total amount that's being spent on this. And my concern is that with the combination of the NDP pushing the Liberals on the green energy file to spend more, the chaos that occurred during the pandemic, where clearly some people, benefited inappropriately. It's what's going on that we don't know about. Because I think on the green energy thing, in all honesty, in all its aspects, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. And that years from now, when this stuff is looked at, it's going to be horrific.
Last word to you, Brian, a quick one. It's going to be a Herculean task to unwind many of these things, whomever is the next federal government. We suspect it will be the Conservatives. And of course, anytime they touch anything that has green on it, they're going to be accused of hating the environment and climate deniers and all of these sorts of things. But moving past all that rhetoric, this is about the money. There are, as Lorrie has indicated, hundreds, potentially hundreds of billions of dollars at stake here with little to no accountability. Last word, Brian.
I'm with Lorrie. How much of that money is being misappropriated, misspent that we'll never find out? And you're right, Pierre Poilievre is going to face a huge task if and when he becomes prime minister on doing these. You know, Doug Ford canceled a subsidy for electric vehicles when he first took office. That is now just over 6 years ago. And the media and the opposition continue to bring it up. It was cutting that subsidy was supported by the Canadian auto industry because they said we're subsidizing Porsches and high-end Teslas, none of which are made in Ontario. You touch anything green and pull it back, Pierre Poilievre is going to hear the wails of banshees from the press gallery time and time again. It's not going to be pretty, but there is a big job to do cleaning up the mess that this Trudeau government has created on all fronts.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to the TorontoSun.com. You're going to find commentary and coverage there you'll not find anywhere else.